Welcome back to another edition of Deviatus. Just want to take a moment and send a quick shout out to Samantha Lang, who listens to the show all the way from Australia. Samantha sent me a description of a series of encounters she had as a child that was partially shared by her sister. She described an entity which regularly harassed her and her sister after they dabbled with a Ouija board. Now, I've heard a lot of questions about the use of Ouija boards, and I personally don't have any experiences using one, and that's completely intentional on my part, don't get me wrong. I've always thought of them as kind of opening a doorway that's non-selective about who or what may enter through it, so I tend to avoid that. Samantha gave me permission to share her story, and I'll have to do that on a future episode and perhaps even have her on the show herself if she's comfortable with that. I don't want to put her on the spot though, but just wanted to say thanks to Samantha for listening and sharing your chilling tale with me. Now, every time I record an episode, I typically discuss one specific type of incident or phenomenon, but every once in a while you run into someone who's had multiple different types of experiences. Being a podcast listener myself, I've heard of people having UFO experiences along with Bigfoot experiences, or they've had shadow figures in their homes as well as an alien visitation encounter. But how many people have you heard of who have had experiences with ghosts, UFOs, and Bigfoot? This week, we're joined by Ed Roman. Ed is an award-winning singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist from Shelburne, Ontario, Canada. His plethora of experiences involving the paranormal span so many various different types that once I heard he had all of these types of experiences, I just had to have him on the show. Ed says these moments in his life, which started at a very young age, have served as a catalyst for some of his music. So I sat down with Ed recently to discuss all of these things to try to figure out why he's so prone to experiencing a multitude of these things. So without further ado, here's Ed Roman. Well, let's just do this. I think we should just start off, maybe if you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Sure. I'm a Canadian musician, Ed Roman. It's a pleasure to be here on the show. And my background is music. I mean, I've been playing music since I was about 5, dabbling in all sorts of different genres and playing in all kinds of bands, whether it be African bands, jazz ensembles, stage bands, country bands, pop bands, funk bands, Africa. I kind of love all music, especially if there's a good vibe and a good energy behind what's going on. So it's been a lifelong pursuit for me. In the last 5-6 years, I've released 3 records, 2 of which have received 10 pre-Grammy nominations, multiple nominations from guilds across the United States, and awards from guilds across the United States. Multiple radio stations have been playing the music for a long time now. Mm-hmm. And that's great. So I'm very connected to that side of what art is for me in terms of music. And I guess that was really accelerated by a lot of things in early childhood and really having grandparents as a part of the family dynamic living in the household, as well as your parents and brothers and sisters, really cultivated this sort of culture of storytelling. And for me, music and singing, writing lyrics, they're all part of that experience of storytelling. But those are kind of really where I heard the early whispers of the idea that the paranormal was a reality. We lived in a really old farmhouse. That's one thing, which was sort of impregnated with a lot of really interesting energy. Mm-hmm. And we grew up near a really old creek system, which was sort of a confluence of another river system that ran further south of us. So if you know anything about rivers and spiritual activity and or Aboriginal practices, they usually occur in those kinds of areas. So I would say that the land itself had a certain energy or juice to it, and as a result, hearing those stories from my grandmother especially and grandfather, and most of it was part of our family allegory as far as family lineage and things that had happened, it really sort of made me look around in a different way at things, and not like it's the funny thing, Jeremy. It's like these experiences, when they occur and when they happen, seem to happen in these envelopes of like extreme passion or like extreme anxiety or there's some craziness going on, a passing of a friend, some detrimental incident, or other things that, are really punctuated by beautiful moments in your life, of the purchase of a new home, perhaps, or, something that's really, life experiencing in terms of, setting down roots. So I guess that's what it is. Those things started to show themselves. And because I'm open to what those things are, I guess I started to see them more frequently. And as a result, now when they do occur, I don't take them for granted. And at the same time, I can't see it as coincidence, because there seems to be some significance behind the experience for the experiencer. And for me, that's kind of where even the writing experience goes hand in hand, because, we're also inundated with information, our own thoughts, our own emotions. And when we kind of are, sparked by the initial idea in something, there's something very paranormal, if you will, or spiritual for me in the writing process, because I try to let the process pull me through it as opposed to prejudging it. Right. And that's where I guess even my love and diversity for what I write, Ed's records, he's got a country tune, he's got a folk tune, he's got a pop tune, he's got a rock number, he's got a jazz piece. To me, the experience, who am I, to say, whoa, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. There's something bigger happening here. And again, who am I to ignore it? So that's kind of really what I'm all about, and what I've been, doing with my life as far as that side of my being, and it actually, it makes for a very fruitful and interesting experience. I'll say that.
Well, you said something interesting about your grandparents kind of opening you up to that sort of thing. Do you feel like you started having your own paranormal experiences after they kind of opened you up, or did you see things or experience things before that, and it kind of connected the dots for you when they did?
Well, that's a great question, Jeremy, because it was like, okay, the big story in the family was my grandmother's brother was born with all of his hair and his teeth and could already speak. And by the time, I'll say that again, was already born with all of his hair and teeth and could speak already.
Right, that's not to be glossed over.
No, it's not to be glossed over. And the reality of this was, he was so intellectual. He would spend time speaking with the elders in the village in the old country. We're from Slovakia. And he would start to he'd say, all right, this is when I'm going to die. And when I'm 11, I'll have this little outfit, and I'm going to go underneath the apple tree over there, lie down. Kids are all going to come, and I'm going to have my funeral and just die. And my grandmother, his name was Ergi. He'd say, why, don't say this, and other people in the village would say, he's gifted, he's special, there's something, da-da-da. And sure enough, on his 11th birthday, he goes under the tree and dies. And he would even practice his own funeral. It was like this really weird thing, So for me, I was like, well, this is beyond the normal realms of what any 5 to 7 year old is normally accustomed to hearing in terms of the normal spectrum of things. So I just went, well, and if my grandmother is telling this story and my mom is confirming it, and so is my grandfather and anybody that I knew that came from there to visit us. So it was a reality. So I guess that was the one part of it that got me thinking about it. But the other thing was the house itself, as I said, and the area. My grandmother had said she had people touching her in the basement when she was down there sometimes. I couldn't go down to that basement alone without some feeling of some kind of a presence. There was a gentleman when the silo was being built on the farm that fell off the silo and died. And years later, I started to think to myself, was this him? Was this some sort of a connection? Not only that, just before I was born, my entire family all had a mass UFO experience where this large orb landed between the barn and our house, and it was there for almost 5 minutes. And all of that to me was like, well, wait a minute, there's something else kind of going on here inside. And is it a family experience? Is it like I said, is it related to the land and what's going on around us? Is it related to, us as people? Because, my grandfather had certain circumstances that happened to him, my grandmother, my dad, my mom. all of that, even my sister, just after my brother's good friend passed away, would be having these dreams about his friend coming and visiting her while she was asleep. Like, and my sister's got a kind of that level of gifted kind of feeling of paranormal, ability, or what do they call themselves? Physical mediums. But she's never really massaged it into a practice or anything like that. So I say it's a balance between both to answer the question, because you're always kind of like, oh, here's something new. I'll chalk that up on the belt loop to something like, wow, I can't believe this just happened. So it kept getting stronger. And as I said, they seem to come in moments of really prolific moments in my life where something crazy was going on, or something beautiful was going on. And some people would say, well, you're anthropomorphizing something inside of the circumstance and you're looking for those things. Like when a woman thinks she's pregnant, she sees light bulb commercials and birth control commercials and, stuff for cribs and, refinishing all of that. There's too many things inside of them that have tentacles that I can't, like I said, I can't say that's just circumstantial. There's something bigger happening here, and it's impossible that this coincidence could have occurred to make me think this, or even a multitude of people realize what's going on.
Well, and perhaps I'm jumping the gun with this question. I do want to hear more about the individual experiences you've had, but did you ever come to a conclusion as far as, whether it was like the land, or did you think maybe something in your family or something genetic might be causing all of this for your whole family?
It's a funny question. Sometimes I kid with people in sort of a Mark Twain kind of way and say, it's because we grew up too close to the hydro wires or something. But the thing is that experience seems to have followed us through our lives in different ways. So I would say I don't know, and that's the thing. It's a beautiful experience, as I mentioned before, because you're kind of continually learning from what that all is, and the experiences themselves are so different sometimes that you're still kind of trying to figure out what envelope they belong in and what the significance of them are. So I think more importantly is that you're sort of paying attention to it and then trying to shuffle through it as opposed to dismissing it. I know a lot of people that dismiss, but for me, when I point out the so-called quote unquote spiritual math behind something, they're like, well, yeah, that is pretty hard to discount.
Okay. Well, now you mentioned the UFO sighting. That was before you were born, right?
Yeah, just before I was born.
Did anybody report that to the police, or is there any sort of documentation that you're aware of?
Absolutely. In fact, the next day, the Buttonville Airport, which was not too far from where we lived, only about 2.5 miles, which is just north of Toronto by about 10, 15 miles, that had reported 6 different unidentified flying objects in the area, as well as the David Dunlop Observatory, the astrological observatory that was in Richmond Hill that worked in conjunction with the University of Toronto. My mom had even called the Buttonville Airport to say, hey, we had seen this thing, and she was just trying to describe the light. That's what was so odd, because my mom's attention was originally drawn to the fact that she thought there was something wrong with the pump in our basement, because all the pipes were rattling, like this heavy vibration. Mm-hmm. So she went downstairs, and there was nothing wrong. And when she came back upstairs, the stairway gave way to an open bay window in our kitchen, and she saw what she thought was going to be a plane, because we were so close to the airport, crashing into the house. And she actually got down on her knees, and everybody went, what's wrong? And then she's looking, and she's like, well, look out the window. And my family's description, my brother, 2 sisters, grandparents, and my mom were all this light that was so bright that you couldn't look at it, like an arc light. You shouldn't be looking at it from welding or something. Mm-hmm. But when you looked away, you realized that despite its brilliance, it cast no shadow. And then within about 4 minutes of this kind of experience, they said it lifted up over our barn very slowly, like a bouncing ball, and then almost started to follow the topography of the land in this sort of undulating kind of movement. And she was like an oblong white ball, or with a series of lights that were underneath it that you could say were green or red or orange or whatever. But my mom was like, it was weird because they were all mingling into each other. So they weren't stable, staying in any particular color at any moment in time. And it was near the lower third half of this orb shape that was there. So I think that, the description of it and everything that had happened and what she was trying to discern for herself, because she was afraid, she wasn't sure what she had witnessed, was all part of her little investigative thing to try to figure out, like, look, here, Tony, my dad came home and she's like, look, it's in the paper, or, she'd called the airport and heard those things. So, yeah, there was that sort of confirmation on a paperwork level, if you will, that something like that had occurred.
That's really interesting. Have you had any particular UFO sightings yourself?
I have had one, and with my sister-in-law, and it was, again, farmland. I grew up, still live in farm country, coming home between farms from feeding animals. And my sister-in-law was with me, as I said. I was driving, she was in the front seat, and as we were coming into our main property, through the sort of cracks in the pine tree line that was sort of abunked one of the farm fields, I could see this round, red, circular orb that I could tell was obviously big because it was at a distance, and it seemed large to me despite it was at a distance. And again, the center of this red orb was swirling this sort of white vortexy like looking thing. And because I'm so talk to Ed about paranormal experiences, everybody's like, talk to Ed. The car's not even stopped, it's in neutral. I'm jumping out of the car, running to the tree line to try to see what this is. My sister-in-law is like yelling at me, going, come back to the car. And I get to the tree line, and my excitement level has thrust me to this point. But at the same time, I'm terrified to enter the field because I don't know what this is. And I calling my sister, Lynn, come here. And she's like, she won't get out of the car because she's so afraid. And so as I'm watching it, it sort of starts to kind of do what my mom had described, but in a far more angular fashion, and seemed to be far more erratic. And I was going through a bunch of things like, is it plasma? Is it this? And there were so many things that led me to believe this is somehow intelligently controlled, because my perception of it seemed to me that it looked like in its angular movement, it was looking for something. And it slowly kept doing these sort of strange patterns for close to about 10 minutes. And I watched it as my sister-in-law wouldn't get out of the car. And it kept sort of moving in a westerly direction. And then I lost sight of it because there's bigger trees and, just the geography of the land and everything. But that was my own sort. And it's funny. It's like, when the family gets together at Christmas time or Easter or whatever, Thanksgiving, and we're talking about certain things, these kinds of stories are sort of reiterated and talked about. This was even stuff that I remember when I was a kid going to my grandparents' place and hearing stories about strange lights landing in the field when my grandfather was combining and things like that. So I guess that's what it is. As a family, we keep these stories alive, and we're passing it down from generation to generation. Whether or not it, like I said, anthropomorphizes something in our own minds about our own experiences, well, I kind of beg to differ, because I think it's just a matter of a heightened sense of perception. So, it's fascinating, man. Fascinating.
Well, I think when you talk about UFO sightings, there's a wide spectrum of beliefs, and obviously there's things to support that, such as radar readings that are documented that say, yes, there's something out there that we don't know what it is that's flying around. And then there's, people who believe that there are individual beings inside piloting these things, and some even more, to the far end of the spectrum beliefs. But where do you lie on this as far as within that spectrum?
That's a wonderful question, because, and as you so eloquently put, there are so many opinions, and I think that is the telltale sign of what it really is that there are so many aspects to this that dimensionally, whether it be in the immediate physical or interdimensional, or even in the cosmic spiritual realm of it all. Because, some really good physical mediums that I like to listen to or I've seen realize this in certain locations where it's not just like a physical being that has had a crucial incident happen and they're stuck there, or they're there in visitation, or they're there as a result of something being conjured inside of the house. There are also other things that seem to be out of the normal realm of thinking about what could be there on a plane level, a dimensional level that crosses that boundary into the alien world, the world of, well, what the heck is that? Some may call it a demon or some black entity of some kind. This is why Aboriginal people, kept this land, stayed off of it. They didn't go there. That's what's so amazing, is that there seems to be so many different aspects to it that it's really hard just to pinpoint it as one thing. And that, I think, what then also makes it hard for somebody to find the belief in what it is, because it is so diverse, and everybody could chalk it up as the Hollywood, psychological experience. Well, you thought you saw that because you read the comic book, or whatever. But to me, that's the thing. I think this has been going on all through history. There are people that are attuned and are gifted in some ways of being able to see it, participate in it, some of which don't want to participate it, but it happens to them. But I think that the ones that have the understanding and the explanation for what it is are the teachers. They're the ones that try to summate the allegory in some kind of a way for people to go, oh, okay, well, this is what we know. It's kind of on the books, so. It's fascinating to me, and I'm always, as I say, always learning from every time I see something new about it. I'm like, wow, I didn't think you could look at it from that perspective.
I wonder if you hear these stories where, certain individuals claim they have the ability to walk out into a field or on their property and just, I don't know if it's telepathically communicate or just will, think to themselves, I want to see some lights right now. And, these lights appear in the night sky. Have you ever tried anything like that just to experiment?
Absolutely. And that's what's odd about this, is that as much as I've tried to search, go driving, go UFO hunting, or, whatever it is, go to the old house and check it out. There may be little levels of what that is. But for me, and it's weird because, as I said, it seems to be at these moments that you least expect it. And that in the end, looking back in retrospect, there's a necessity for why, when, and how it occurred. This is what I find interesting about the spiritual connection that Aboriginal people have, not only to land, but sacred elements to the land. Now, North Americans are, I'm sure, we're well aware of Bigfoot and Sasquatch and everything like that. But a lot of Aboriginal cultures consider them to be something that's always been here, and that they have this natural, I don't know if you want to say, interdimensional quality to who they are, or they are a real person to some of those cultures. They will say that you can't go looking for them, that they come looking for you. Those people that define an experience in something that happens in some kind of way, especially those that are attuned to what that is, will say, well, no, this happened for a reason. And now it's not just the experience that's changed their life, but it's given them a new way of thinking about what life really is. So I guess that's for me, when I've tried to manifest okay, I'm in the room, I haven't set up a psychomantium or anything like that, but it's like the lights are dark, lit a candle, and I'm really trying to focus and concentrate on some sort of spiritual communication with a past loved one. Well, it doesn't happen. But then I have this experience in my home with this toy from the 70s after a friend of mine passes away, where it starts playing these rhythms, and he used to be a drummer, and it doesn't play rhythms. I start going and having conversations with this thing, and it happens at a most crucial point in time when, for me as a person, I needed some sense of solace or communication with somebody I felt really, I loved. He was my friend. I've known him since I was like 5-6 years old. Mm-hmm. So that for me was like, I couldn't make it happen and manifest, but it somehow, by paying attention to this silly little thing, I started to realize what was happening. And then I felt the connection. For me, it was that on that level. And other things then started inside of that incident show me that all this was kind of connected in some kind of way.
Well, and I didn't mean to pigeonhole you into the UFO experience, because I know you've had more than just that. Maybe if we could go back to, I guess, the first experiences you had growing up, what kind of experiences were those, and I guess where did those lead?
Well, some of them, where did they lead? I guess they led to definitely a heightened sense of interest in studying it, and studying it really from, I guess, a romantic perspective, but also a healthy sense of skepticism when it comes to, well, wait a minute, this is like the story from somebody that just maybe had too much to drink, or, you're kind of making this up, or I'm looking for, like you, in some way, that sort of confirmation of experience and what that means for that person. So I guess it really led me into a realm of a multitude of different things, like whether it be interested in ufology or the Bigfoot phenomenon or the paranormal or, so many different things. I guess it's blanketed by the fact that this sort of hidden information or stuff that is just out of the normal spectrum is what, for me, keeps things sort of fascinating and interesting. So one night if something comes up from a cryptozoological level about something I've never seen, but I'm going to watch it just because I want to hear the perspective, the take, and more so even the folklore and everything that goes in behind it, because once again, I'm a storyteller. So a part of, in some ways, what helps embellish a story is the way that somebody tells it. So that's a big part of that research aspect of it for me. So it really did that for me in those initial experiences, like, get your hand on any book and watch any documentary you can. And I'm even speaking from a 70s perspective when we were just getting stuff from Penguin Books on, Bigfoot and that kind of a thing. But the other thing was that for some reason, that heightened sense of awareness through those first experiences were, I guess, a catalyst for kind of thinking differently about the world. Because, in some ways, it's funny we're having this conversation, and again, coincidence, but what's his name from Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Oh, Richard Dreyfuss.
Richard Dreyfuss, right? And the whole experience in the movie for him is this psychological, almost psychotic, like driven experience by this mound, that he keeps seeing in his mind and whatever. But it's funny, you start to see as the movie goes on that there's this preparation that's been going on behind the scenes with these people in red suits that are being trucked in, and they're being prepared for this kind of a contact. It's, really been known about the whole time, but they weren't the ones that were impregnated with this sense of perception to realize what's occurring. And Dreyfuss really wants to go. They're the aliens, when they come out of the ship, they come to him. Mm-hmm. They don't go to all the other professors and all the other people. They want to take him because they know that he's been chosen for some reason. And I guess for me, it's not like I find life mundane, but there's the fascinating aspect to life. That's what it turned on for me, is that possibility and realm of potential that if you look hard enough, listen, pay attention to certain things, these kinds of experiences manifest and or you see them in certain ways had you not been this attuned to things. So it greatly affected me on that level. And now, for some reason, there's things that occur even on a natural level in my natural living environment that occur to me that I go, my God, had I not put myself in this position, I wouldn't have witnessed this. I'm a big gardener. My family comes from a big family of farming. We grow a big garden every year. I'm standing out there a couple summers ago. All of a sudden, I hear this humming in the field behind me, and hundreds, if not thousands, of bees come out of the field because they're following a queen to a new location in a hive. And I get this shiver that runs up my back like when you hear a favorite song. And I think to myself, my God, I can't believe what I've just witnessed here on a natural phenomenon. And had I not been here, attuned to it, in this position, I wouldn't have witnessed it. So really that's the catalyst for a lot of my thinking. Even when I'm not thinking about it, I have a heightened sense of awareness when it comes to certain things, and sometimes to my own detriment, because people say, you never stop thinking, you never shut up. My students, when I was teaching for years, like, you're still talking. It's kind of the way I've been wired, I think, as a result of it, to answer that part of the question.
Well, and if you could just walk me through the very first experience you can remember having, and I guess maybe tell us how old you were and what made you think, this was possibly something paranormal or difficult to explain.
Well, I guess because the house itself was so old and we paired up. It was small, a tiny little farmhouse. My brother, my grandfather in one room, my sisters in another room, my parents in another room, and me, because I was the baby, 5 years old, with my grandmother in another room. Mm-hmm. And I remember having these reoccurring dreams. Those kinds of dreams that when kids have, that it seems to be so waking that it has to be real. And I mean, kids have crazy dreams and whatever. But this one was so repetitive, of this dark figure. And you got to understand the way the farmhouse was built. There's the old main staircase, but then there was this old kind of like wooden spiral staircase that ran from the top of the third floor of the farmhouse all the way to the basement. That was really kind of closed off most of the time in our house because we just used the one staircase. So this dream relevated around this dark figure continually chasing me, and I couldn't get off of this staircase. And I remember a couple of nights waking up screaming at the bottom of my stairs, like I had been sleepwalking. And I think of a 5-year-old realizing I'm sleepwalking. Is this what's happening to me? But screaming when I've woken myself up, and nobody in my house has stirred. Nobody has woken. And it's not a big house. It wasn't big. My grandmother hasn't woken. And I mean, if somebody hit a piece of gravel on the road a quarter of a mile down the road from our house, my grandmother would wake up and wonder what's going on. So I started to feeling like this was unique to me inside of this experience. And I remember, because my grandfather had just passed away, I started asking myself at this really young age, is this my grandfather? And I started to kind of talk to my grandfather. And what happened was that this dream started to leave me. And I started to put this parallel between me having these, what I thought were fictitious conversations with my grandfather, but out of helplessness, had to do it for my own mental security, change that. So I felt that there was, at that young age, this no longer border between what is happening in the physical and what happens in my subconscious, or what I'm experiencing, that has thrown me into this other frame of mind, physical behavior, whatever it is. And that the realization that nobody has witnessed it except me, nor has my yelling and screaming fazed anybody. So it really that was a really big one that set that part of me in like, well, this is happening. This is a reality.
How long did those carry on for?
Oh, about 6 months. And in fact, the funny thing is that I still use those types of things and dreams and these cycles of, I guess, daydreaming, which seem like reality, as catalysts for songs. I mean, for a year and a half, I had a terrible nightmare about this tornado that I couldn't control, totally Dorothy-like moment, almost even black and white in your memory, and the way it's coming at you, and I can't stop it, and all of a sudden I can see the windows and everything's starting to blister apart in front of my face, and then I wake up. So what do? I write a song about what it would be like to be a tornado. I put myself in the tornado's shoes. I tried to turn it into this humoristic, sarcastic view of my horrific experience so I could better understand my enemy. And in the result, out comes this song that ends up getting pressed to a record, and so people are listening to it. So in a weird way, that's what I was getting at before, that thinking pattern or those experiences somehow dictate that even behavioral writing pattern, and how I go through that process, through that whether it's waking in a subconscious, whatever it might be, I'm kind of riding it like a wild horse sometimes, you know?
Well, and knowing that this is helping contribute to your work as a musician, do you tend to seek out these experiences?
Well, I don't know, because that's the thing. I think that living vicariously, and in some ways, as hard as that is to do in the 21st century, and or at least even for me, having some cut of the digital umbilical cord from my biomechanism, my body, helps that experience exist, because you can't get it thumbing through social media, and you can't always have that. You can hear the stories, you can watch a video, that's fine, but somehow by being there or putting yourself in other circumstances is the catalyst for what that is. So, like, I mean, for me, that's a big part of making sure that I do that every day, because for me, it also helps my writing experience, my practice skills, whatever I'm working on when it comes to music. So, yeah, yes.
Now, I also read about you have a Sasquatch sighting as well. Can you walk us through that one?
Excuse the pun. Well, again, it was one of those things where, like, for years I've had interest in it, and it was a catalyst. Another thing, it was a story. Again, my family, would talk about. There's a Patterson Gimlin film came out years ago, and we had some books about it in the house. And my brother always was talking about it, and we knew some family friends that apparently had an experience, but I was a little too young to remember. But I've always been so interested in, as I said, even more so the Aboriginal take on what that is. So here I am, middle of summer, July 6th, in fact, I remember, 3 years ago. And we just finished building a barn, hell of an experience. We put a kiln in it, a wood kiln for firing pottery. My wife is a potter. It was an arduous task. Every brick, 15,000 pounds of brick, moved by hand, placed, put together, weeks of work. It had been complete, and we were going to get ready to fire it for the first time. So a lot of life mission work coming to completion and about to begin as well. And I'm alone. I'm with the dog. I'm going out back, check the garden, pull some weeds, see what's going on today. We have coyotes. We're on the back of a forest line. They started going crazy at like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's not normal behavior for coyotes in a pack in the daytime in July to be going kind of crazy in this protected bush that's behind my house. So I go and grab the dog, and I said, come on, buddy, let's go in the house. And I put him in because he's been chased by the coyotes in the past. And I just didn't want anything to happen and there'd be a problem. So as I come back, and we're sort of walking to the crest of this hill, because the hill is on a fairly good slope as it moves down towards the protected forest. You cannot help but not see the edge of the field line as growing as you sort of walk. And I get to about chest level, and I see this figure that it looks quite tall. And it's all in black. I thought, this was my first impression. I thought, why is there a man, a tall man, wearing a jumpsuit with a balaclava on, standing, looking at the tree line? Now, when I realized, but my attention's been called by the coyotes refuse to come out of the forest. They won't even show themselves, but they're yelping, yap, 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 and almost howling because like something is wrong. And this person, which I thought was a person, was looking at that spot. And within about 8 seconds, no more, it squats down. Excuse the pun again. And then I lose sight of it, because at that time of the year, there's bramble, there's raspberry bushes, there's all sorts of stuff that creates almost like chest height weed that's down there in the lower part of the pasture. And all at once, the coyotes stop. This thing comes bolting out of that area like a bear, on all fours, and in 4 bounds, maybe 5 at most, because at this point I was so afraid, in a sort of a genuflecting-like position, was starting to crawl on my hands back towards the house because I was so afraid. As I look over my shoulder, I notice it stopped, and it stood up on 2 feet, and it's staring at me. And I think it's staring at me because it's looking directly at me. I can't see any eyes. It's all just black face, black chest. But I remember on those first couple bounds when it was coming out of that brush line, you ever see like documentaries with Jeannie Goodall or something, and you could see that mountain gorilla-esque like fur and muscular kind of activity undulating in those jumps. Mm-hmm. That's what scared me so much, because I'm like, that whatever this is, it's big. And then it just turned like I was nothing, walked to its left, and it walked on 2 feet across half of 50 acres, 25 acres, into the bush line on 2 feet and disappeared. And I slowly got up. I kind of looked. I was actually terrified because I didn't know what I had seen. And I came back into the house, and later my wife Kim came home, and I started to tell her what was going on, and she kind of giggled, and she's like, come on. I'm like, no, listen, you don't understand. I don't understand what I saw, and I can't go back there. I don't want to go back there. Because, and then it took me, and it's funny, it's like, so she's telling me, she's like, so you're telling me that if I go back there with you, then you'll go back there? If there's something big back there, what the hell am I going to do? Like, I'm not going back there for a while. I don't know what is back there. So I started contacting some people. I contacted John Bindernagel, and I tried to contact Jeff Meldrum, who are both fairly reputable field biologists who are studying this topic out of universities in a very logical, pragmatic way. And they suggested I contact the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization here in Ontario. And they sent 2 people out here. And they took a bunch of photos, and I took them back. This was like already a year after it happened that I reported it. But nonetheless, they came, and they told me that this particular area where we are has had a number of different sightings since the early, or if not mid to late 20s, of different reports of things that are similar, things that they've said were like ape or simian-like sounds coming from bushes, hairy-like beast figures crossing roads in front of people. And so for me, and they asked me, did you file a report? I said, yeah, I filed it with the BFRO. And I said, but I'm not interested in, any kind of like publicity, or I don't want to be on any show or documentary. I'm trying to point out what happened to me because I don't know. And they showed me another report from the BFRO that happened a couple of years earlier where 4 people coming in a car up a road not too far from here had a similar experience where they actually thought the vehicle was going to collide with the animal. And their original impression was it was a deer that was coming out of an open field into the road. But when they slowed down, they realized their exact words were a jackrabbit-sized man running beside the car.
That's a really small one, huh?
Well, if it's small, if it's a human-sized, hairy, furry-looking kind of thing, I mean, I don't know what it is. So this is the thing. It's like I don't know what I saw. I know it scared me enough to want to warrant me crawling almost back to the house quickly, and then perhaps running when I got far enough away, and also that I didn't want to go. Like, I'm gonna go back there with my dog all the time. I go back now because I've kind of somehow subconsciously dismissed it, and I can do it. But for a while, I was really nervous, and for me, that's the thing. I think part of the mechanism of the fear of not understanding of what it is a big part of that. And people are like, well, it was a bear. But I'm like, well, how can a bear, I mean, even well-trained circus animals, bears and things, I don't know if they can spend a sauntering-esque like walk across 25 acres that takes almost a minute and a half. Maybe they can, but a wild bear that does that and was standing before that, I don't know. And I asked a bunch of hunters that I know, people that have been hunting for years, and they're like, no, man, I've never seen a black bear do that. And some guys I have known have never seen a black bear. So I don't know. Once again, it's one of those experiences that you're like, well, what just happened? And I have to somehow articulate it and talk about it because I don't understand it.
Now, how far away was this thing to you when it was charging across the field like that?
I'd say about 1,000 and a half yards.
Okay. Wow. I mean, I know I couldn't even imagine having something unidentified doing that. I remember camping in Yosemite and walking to the restrooms at night, and they have a little dumpster right next to the building that housed the restrooms. And I remember just walking past that and hearing that thing shuffle, and a freaking bear pops out of it, and that's like 10 feet away. Talk about, I mean, lose your faculties. I didn't know what to do. I froze, and the thing, I think it was more scared of me than I was of it. But I couldn't imagine seeing something that size just charging like that.
Well, and that's just it. It's the sheer, like it was so girthy, like svelte turned sideways, and then instantaneously after jumping out of these sort of brambles and stuff, girthy, like robust, and it seeming to be able to cover an incredible amount of ground in these bounds that it took on four legs. So that, and I've had black bear experience camping up here in northern Ontario, right outside of our tent, because, I think it was some like beeswax or something in the lipsel or something that we had, and waking us up in the middle of the night and feeling like, hey, I'm part of the food chain. Banging pots and pans and blowing canoe whistles and trying to chase it. Like you said, probably more afraid of me than I was of it. But still, you can't help that fear makes you like hyper aware, of what's going on. So
I mean, you've got the holy grail of experiences here, or trifecta of potential, like spirit, paranormal observation with ghosts. You've got UFOs and Sasquatch. I mean, what else is left for you to experience to say you've seen it all?
I don't know. I that's just it. There's always new things occurring, and I'm never it never ceases to amaze me as to, that's the thing about this sort of movement of life that we have, aside from what we do every day, our jobs, our occupations, the thing. There's this other exterior sort of like sub energy of stuff that's kind of occurring, and I don't know what the next one will be, and sometimes I say to myself, well, don't go looking for it, because that's usually when it will occur, and I'm always looking for something that feels like that to me in the writing experience, that either prolific experience through the message and or some sort of like haunting idea behind the potential of something. That's happening to me every day. Even when I've played a song that I've already written that for me has something like that in it, it's a reconjuring of that sort of information that then, again, like I said, makes that part of life robust in some kind of way. But that's the thing. I think that there's many of us that are open to things and attuned to it. Some of us that realize it and some of us that don't. And I think the most important thing is the dialogue that exists inside of talking about it, because that's really the new little bit of fuel, like it was for me as a youngster, hearing these kinds of things that made me go, maybe this is, this is potential. And I've dismissed a number of different things too that I go, well, that just doesn't add up, man. And I'm not doing it to be malicious. It's just, you can kind of see right away what it is. It's a duck, right? It's quacking, it's waddling. So I'm on a continual search. That's the amazing part of it, without really searching.
Well, I think as someone who goes out, speaking about myself, and goes out and looks for documentation of paranormal things. You seem like you'd be like a really a good luck charm, so to speak, to have on my team.
Well, hey, I'd be happy to be there if everything would work out on that level. See, that's the thing. what you just said is the catalyst for that, because sometimes when you pull out of the ordinary, the extraordinary occurs.
Right. Well, if I think maybe one more question for you, and tell me if you're uncomfortable talking about this, but I often find people who have had similar experiences have a kind of a drastic effect on their religious beliefs. Has that impacted yours?
I would say greatly, because I was born Catholic, raised in a Slovak Byzantine-esque, like very Orthodox-esque kind of version of what Christianity is, almost Greek Orthodox. But had a lot of really amazing mentors, despite I grew up in the Catholic education system, that were really open to the possibility and the ideas of other religions. And when I started to see this parallel between so many religions, I started to realize that there's a common theme running through this, that there is this other aspect to us as humans that we need to massage more, understand more, become more aware of, and share. A big part of that is sharing in what it is, to help each other understand what those things are that illuminate us as people, that enlighten us, that make us feel connected to what that other side of things are. So I would say, it did, without it having to be connected to dogma in any way, shape, or form. Mind you, I don't discount it, nor do I ever say somebody shouldn't, because I think it's important for everybody to have their own experience. But at the same time, I see that cosmic parallel existence between it all, and it definitely made me feel more like, you know what, I'm okay with leaving the building, because I kind of know what it's all about. And for me, it comforted me. As dark as some of the topics are, and strange, and circumstances behind some of them that people might tend to stay away. No, I don't talk about spirits. I don't talk about. To me, it's that uncomfortability means that I'm learning something in some way. So I welcome it.
Well, I certainly appreciate you sharing all of these experiences with me today. Where can people go to find out more about you and your work and kind of your latest projects? I know you have a single out right now that I got permission to play. Hopefully that's okay with you.
Yes, you heard it here from Ed Roman. Google bots do not bug Jeremy. It's okay.
So where do you have a website people can go to, or social media?
Absolutely. edroman.net is my website. My social media buttons are there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, my YouTube channel as well. Most of the time when you look for me, it'll be Special Ed Roman, like Special Ed Roman on YouTube, Special Ed Roman on Twitter, Ed Roman Music on Facebook. But the new album is out. It's been out for almost a year. It won't be a year until June. A couple singles have been released this year. They're doing really well, including picking up some awards. So, be happy and give it a listen. And I'm sure you might enjoy it. It's kind of fun and crazy, and it'll make you think a little bit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ed.
My pleasure, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.
Just wanted to say a big thanks to Ed for this thought-provoking interview. You can find all of this episode's show notes at deviatus.com/24. I also wanted to thank Ed's manager, Michael Stover, for connecting us. Michael actually submitted a guest request form for Ed on my website, and due to a technical glitch, I wasn't able to view that submission until recently. Now that it's been fixed, you too can suggest a guest for the show, whether that's yourself, someone you know, or if you just have a recommendation. To submit a guest, just go to deviatus.com and click on the guests page. You can also email directly at deviatuspod@gmail.com to submit your recommendation. If you don't necessarily have a guest to recommend, I'd still love to hear from you. Shoot me an email. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and how you listen to the show. I would also be happy to hear about any experiences you want to share with me concerning the paranormal, so feel free to drop me a line. Thought I would end the show differently this week by sharing some of Ed's music with you. I was provided with one of his latest singles called The Way She Goes. So have a great week, and once again, here's Ed Roman.
I could dance a lifetime with my sweet tobacco rose. You could build paint your nation with dirty hands in denim clothes. And even in our twilight, I think that everybody knows. An open mind, a subtle heart are the only way she goes, and that's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people acting crazy, that's the way she goes. Have you been singing this song lately? The whistle on your kettle's been chirping, and beat red is the song. Your mortal shackle's been winning battles, I think you've known this all along. The squeaky wheel's been seasoned because the grease price is too high. Just change another channel, it never ever changes, and wave it all goodbye. That's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people acting crazy, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, sha la 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 la. We know it's wrong, but we say it's right. Sha la 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 la. We know it's black, but we say it's white. Sha la 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 la. You gotta put up a hell of a fight. Yes, you do. We're somewhere in the middle of the ending. So summarize your fears and woes. It's like a fragrant golden season. It purifies you and your soul. I tip my hat to rebels when the newsman calls him foe. And if you check inside your pockets, you'll find it's all just one big show. But that's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people been acting crazy, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song, that's the way she goes. That's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song, if you've been singing this song lately, that's the way she goes. That's the way she goes.